What if there was a reset button for your entire digestive system? Well, that's kind of the idea behind Shankha prakshalana, a really powerful and honestly profound internal cleansing technique from the world of Hatha Yoga. And it has some deep historical roots, but also some surprisingly modern uses.
So let's just start with that big question. What if you could literally wash your entire digestive system, from top to bottom, as simply as you wash your hands? That's the core concept we're exploring today.
Okay, let's break down this beautiful name, Shankha prakshalana. It comes from two Sanskrit words, Shankha, which means conch shell, and prakshalana, which means to wash completely. Think about it. The coiled, winding shape of a conch shell is this perfect metaphor for our own intestines. So we are quite literally washing the conch.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to unpack the ancient purpose of washing the conch. Then, we'll walk through the actual method itself. After that, we'll cover some really crucial safety warnings. Then, we'll take a look at what modern science has to say about all this, and finally, we'll bring it all together.
First up, where does this practice even come from? It's so important to get this right from the start. This isn't some new age detox fad. It's a traditional practice that was designed for a very specific purpose deep within the yogic system.
And this is where you see this fascinating contrast. Traditionally, the goal was all about reducing what yogis called mala, impurities, to get the body ready for really advanced breathing practices, things like pranayama. But today, modern medicine is actually looking at it for super practical things like prepping a patient for a colonoscopy. Two very different worlds looking at the same technique.
You know, this idea of cleansing goes way, way back. Around the 15th century, a key text laid the groundwork for 6 major cleansing actions. But it wasn't until a couple of centuries later, in a text called the Garanda Samhita, that we get a really clear description of this exact technique. They called it Varisara Dauti, which means water essence washing. And now here we are, centuries later, and it's popping up in clinical trials. How cool is that?
Okay, so that's the what and the why. But what about the how? How is this actually done? Let's get into the method, because it's a very structured and systematic process.
The stuff you need is surprisingly simple. Warm water, some salt, mixed in to match your body's own salinity, which is about 9 grams per liter, an empty stomach, and a totally free schedule for the day. But look, the most important thing on this list, and I really can't stress this enough, is expert supervision. This is absolutely not a DIY experiment you try on a whim.
So the full protocol, the one they call Purna Shankha prakshalana, it works in this really neat cycle. You drink a set amount of the warm salt water, and then you immediately do a sequence of 5 specific yoga postures. These aren't random. They're designed to help open up the valves in your digestive tract and move that water along. Then you visit the toilet, and you repeat the whole cycle. Drink, move, check, over and over until the water coming out is just as clear as the water going in.
Now, it's also really important to know there are 2 main flavors of this practice. You've got Purna, the full, intensive flush we just talked about, and then there's Lagu, which is a shorter, gentler version. It uses less water, fewer cycles, and it's often the one that's studied for more regular use, like helping manage constipation.
And this brings us to an absolutely crucial point. Because this is such a powerful technique, it really demands respect. You have to have a serious understanding of who should not be doing it.
Modern science is crystal clear about this. If you have any of the conditions you see here, and this is not an exhaustive list, things like pregnancy, serious heart or kidney issues, active IBD, or any kind of intestinal blockage, this practice should be strictly avoided. It's just not for you.
And you know what's interesting? This isn't just modern doctors being cautious. The tradition itself builds in this idea of caution. The Garanda Samhita calls it a great secret, to be carefully guarded. That tells you that even the ancient yogis knew this was serious business, not something to be taken lightly.
Okay, so we've covered the what, the how, and the who shouldn't. Now let's put this ancient practice under the modern microscope and see what the science actually says.
This is where it gets really, really interesting. A randomized controlled trial put Shankha prakshalana head-to-head against the standard medical stuff doctors use to prep for a colonoscopy. They measured how well each one worked using a standard scoring system, and get this, the yogic technique actually scored higher on average than the standard medical prep.
So you see this number on the screen, P equals 0.007. What on earth does that mean? Well, in plain English, it means the result is the real deal. It wasn't a fluke. There's a super low probability, less than 1%, that this just happened by random chance. So in this study, the yogic method was measurably better.
And the research doesn't stop with colonoscopies. This table gives us a nice little summary. The full practice, the porno one, showed it worked better and, this is a big one, had fewer side effects like nausea and bloating. The shorter, Lagu version has been shown to improve bowel health scores, and there's even some early data suggesting it might be a safe and useful practice for people with mild to moderate hypertension.
So, what do we do with all this information? How do we pull together this ancient wisdom with these modern scientific findings? What's the final takeaway?
Well, the most sensible way to look at it seems to be with what you could call a triple yes. First, a big yes to its serious, legitimate place within the yogic tradition. Second, a cautious yes to the growing interest from the biomedical world. And a third, and maybe the most important, yes to restraint, to caution, and to respecting the power of this technique.
And this really brings it all home. It's kind of amazing when you think about it. Whether you're looking at that secret, carefully guarded language from a centuries-old yoga text, or the strict list of reasons not to do it from a modern clinical trial, the message is exactly the same. Do it carefully, do it under guidance, and have a deep respect for how your body actually works.
Which leaves us with a final question to chew on. Is Shankha prakshalana an ancient secret that's best left to dedicated yogis, or could it be a validated medical tool of the future? As the evidence suggests, maybe it's a little bit of both. Thanks so much for joining us.